I want to show you something that looks wrong the first time you see it. If your goal is $1 million and you currently have $100,000 saved, most people would tell you that you're 1/10 of the way there. 10%. 1/10. Still 90% of the journey remaining. That is the intuitive answer. That is the linear answer. That is also completely wrong. And understanding why it's wrong is one of the most important things you can learn about how wealth actually builds. The real answer is that you are not 1/10 of the way to $1 million. You are 1/3 of the way there. And the difference between those two numbers, between 10% and 33%, is not a rounding error or a motivational trick. It is the mathematical reality of compound interest operating over time. It is the reason the second $100,000 arrives faster than the first, and the third faster than the second, and why the journey from $100,000 to $1 million takes less time than the journey from $0 to $100,000. This video is about that math. The real math. The kind that most people never see clearly enough to believe, and that changes everything about how you think about the progress you're making right now. My name is Daniel. Let's start from the beginning. How most people think about wealth building. Picture a number line. 0 on the left, 1 million on the right. Your goal is to move from left to right, $1 at a time, until you reach the end. Under this model, progress is linear. Every dollar you save moves you $1 closer. $100,000 saved means you're 10% of the way there. $500,000 means you're halfway. The journey is evenly distributed across the full distance. This is how most people visualize saving money. And it produces a very specific feeling when you check your investment account after years of consistent contributions and see a balance that, against the $1 million target, looks almost irrelevant. You're 43 years old. You've been contributing to your 401k for 18 years. Your balance is $187,000. Under the linear model, you're 18.7% of the way to $1 million, less than 1/5. Still, more than 4/5 of the distance remaining. That feeling of working hard, being responsible, doing everything right, and still appearing to barely have scratched the surface is one of the primary reasons people lose faith in the process and stop. The linear model is not just inaccurate. It is genuinely demoralizing in a way that causes real people to make real decisions that cost them real wealth. Here is the correct model. How compound interest actually works. Compound interest is not complicated, but it operates in a way that is deeply counterintuitive to how human beings naturally think about progress. When you invest money and earn a return, you earn that return on your original principal. In year 2, you earn a return on your original principal plus the return from year 1. In year 3, you earn a return on the principal plus year 1's return plus year 2's return. Each year's return becomes part of the base that the next year's return is calculated on. The total grows not in a straight line, but in a curve. Slow at first, then steeper still, until the growth each year exceeds what you contributed in the earliest years of the entire journey. Here is what this looks like with the specific numbers. You invest $100 per week, approximately $400 per month, in a broad index fund generating an average 8% annual return. This is a realistic, conservative assumption. The S&P 500 has averaged over 10% annually across the last century, including every crash, recession, and economic crisis in that period. Year 1 to year 12. The foundation. After 12 years of consistent weekly contributions, your account reaches $100,000. Your personal contributions, approximately $62,000. Growth from compound interest, approximately $38,000. You did most of the work. The compounding helped but wasn't dominant yet. This feels slow. This is slow. The mathematics of compounding haven't had enough time to become the primary driver. This is the hardest stretch. Not because it requires the most discipline, though it does. Because the returns don't yet look impressive in absolute dollar terms. And the linear thinking tells you you're only 1/10 of the way to your goal. You are not 1/10 of the way. Here is why. Why $100,000 is already 1/3 of the way to $1 million. At $100,000, your account has reached a critical threshold. From this point forward, compound interest is no longer warming up. It is the dominant force. The same $100 per week that took 12 years to produce $100,000 now works alongside a $100,000 base that is independently generating returns every single year. The $100,000 at 8% returned generates $8,000 in its first year alone, before a single additional contribution. That $8,000 is 2 months of your weekly contributions happening automatically, without your labor, without your time, without a single additional decision on your part. Year 12 to year 18, $100,000 to $200,000. The second $100,000 arrives in approximately 6 years, exactly half the time of the first. Total time invested, 18 years. Portfolio balance, $200,000. Your personal contributions, approximately $94,000. Compound growth, approximately $106,000. For the first time, the interest has contributed more to your account than you have. But here is the number that explains the 1/3 claim. At $200,000 with consistent contributions continuing, you are mathematically halfway to $1 million, not 1/5, which means at $100,000, you were 1/3 of the way there. Not because $100,000 is 1/3 of $1 million, it isn't. It's 1/10. Because the time required to go from $100,000 to $1 million is approximately twice the time required to go from $0 to $100,000. The first third of the journey in time terms produces $100,000. The remaining 2/3 of the journey produces the remaining $900,000. The compounding is doing more and more of the work. Your contributions become a smaller and smaller percentage of each new $100,000. Time becomes your most powerful financial asset. Not your income, not your investment selection, the complete timeline. Let's map the full journey from $0 to $1 million at $100 per week and 8% average annual return. $0 to $100,000, 12 years. This is the hardest stretch. Slow, discouraging to the linear thinker. The phase where most people give up. Your contributions are doing the heavy lifting. Compound interest is helping but not yet dominant. $100,000 to $200,000, 6 years. The pace doubles. Same weekly contribution. The $100,000 base is now generating $8,000 per year at 8%. You hit $200,000 at the 18-year mark. $200,000 to $400,000, 7 years. The base is now $200,000, generating $16,000 per year at 8%. You reach $400,000 at approximately year 25. $400,000 to $1 million, 11 years. Your contributions are now a minor factor. Compound interest is generating $32,000 to $60,000 per year as the balance grows through this range. You reach $1 million at approximately year 36. Total personal contributions over 36 years, approximately $187,000. Final account balance, approximately $1 million plus. You contributed less than $200,000. The remaining $800,000 plus came from compound growth. More than 80% of your final wealth was generated not by your labor, but by your money's labor. By returns compounding on returns across 3.5 decades. But here is the number that explains the 1/3 claim. At $200,000, with consistent contributions continuing, you are mathematically halfway to $1 million, not 1/5, which means at $100,000, you were 1/3 of the way there. Not because $100,000 is 1/3 of $1 million. It isn't. It's 1/10. Because the time required to go from $100,000 to $1 million is approximately twice the time required to go from $0 to $100,000. The first third of the journey in time terms produces $100,000. The remaining 2/3 of the journey produces the remaining $900,000. The compounding is doing more and more of the work. Your contributions become a smaller and smaller percentage of each new $100,000. Time becomes your most powerful financial asset, not your income, not your investment selection, not your financial intelligence. The milestone that changes everything psychologically. There is a reason Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner and one of the greatest investors in history, specifically identified $100,000 as the critical milestone. He didn't say $500,000. He didn't say $250,000. He said $100,000. And he used language that acknowledged how difficult and unglamorous the journey to that number is. The reason $100,000 is the milestone that matters most isn't only mathematical, though the math is compelling. It's psychological. Before $100,000, your annual investment returns are measured in hundreds or low thousands. A good year on a $30,000 portfolio produces $2,400 in returns. Meaningful, but invisible against the backdrop of the $1 million goal. At $100,000, a good year produces $10,000 in returns. That is a number you can feel. A number that starts to seem real. A number that, when you see it in your account, changes your relationship with the process from, I hope this works eventually, to, I can see this working right now. This shift is not just emotional. It produces behavioral changes that directly accelerate the journey. People who cross $100,000 and feel the compounding become visible are more likely to increase their contributions, more likely to redirect bonuses and windfalls to investments, more likely to protect the account during market downturns instead of panic selling, more likely to stay the course for the decades the math requires. The $1,000 milestone doesn't just mean you're 1/3 of the way to $1 million in time. It means you've built the psychological foundation that makes reaching the $1 million far more probable. The questions that derail people before they get there. Let's address the things that stop people from reaching $100,000 in the first place, because all the compound interest math in the world is irrelevant to someone who never builds the foundation. I can't find $100 per week. The average American household spends approximately $620 per month on food, groceries, and restaurants combined. A 20% reduction through meal planning and one fewer weekly restaurant visit frees $124 per month. That is $31 per week, nearly a third of the weekly investment target, from one category, through one change. The average monthly car payment in the United States is currently $735 on a vehicle that depreciates the moment it leaves the dealership. The person driving a reliable used car with no payment and redirecting $735 per month to investments is making a decision worth hundreds of thousands of dollars over a career, not by earning more, but by deploying existing income differently. The $100 per week is almost always there. The question is whether it's being captured before it disappears into spending that leaves no lasting trace. The market might crash. Yes, it will. Multiple times across the 36-year journey we've described. Every significant market crash in history has been followed by a recovery that exceeded the prior peak. Every single one. But here's the part most people miss about market crashes and long-term investors. Downturns are advantageous for people still accumulating wealth. When the market drops 30%, your $100 weekly contribution buys 43% more shares than it did before the drop. When the market recovers, and it always has, those additional shares are worth significantly more than you paid for them. The investors who were harmed by market crashes are those who sold during the decline. The investors who continued buying during the decline were buying the most valuable shares of their entire investing career at discounted prices. Volatility is not the enemy of the long-term investor. It is one of the primary mechanisms by which long-term investors accumulate wealth faster than the market's average return would predict. 8% returns aren't realistic. The S&P 500 has returned an average of approximately 10.4% annually across the last 100 years. The figure includes the Great Depression, World War II, the 1970s inflation crisis, the dot-com collapse, the 2008 financial crisis, and the 2020 pandemic crash. 8% is not an optimistic projection. It is a conservative adjustment of a 100-year historical average to account for the possibility that the future is worse than the past. Betting against the continued growth of human productivity, innovation, and economic activity over multi-decade periods is not caution. It is a position that has been wrong for a century. The people who waited for certainty before investing never invested. What $100 per week becomes at different ages. The math changes dramatically based on when the clock starts. Starting at 25, 36 years to $1 million. Reach the milestone at 61. Personal contributions, $187,200. Compound growth, $812,800 plus. Starting at 30, same $100 per week. Retire at 66 with approximately $1 million. 5 additional years of work, same outcome. Starting at 35, reach $1 million at approximately 71. 10 more years of working than the person who started at $25 for an identical weekly contribution. Starting at 40, $100 per week for 36 years reaches $1 million at $17. The compound growth that was available at 25 is gone. The time that was the most valuable input in the entire equation cannot be recovered. The cost of delaying is not measured in dollars contributed, it is measured in years of working that wouldn't have been necessary if the process had started earlier. The best time to start was the day you got your first paycheck. The second best time is today. Not next month, not when the market looks more stable, not after the student loans are paid off. Today. Because today's contribution is the one that has the most time to compound. And time is the input that cannot be purchased or recovered once it's passed. The number that proves you're further along than you think. Here is the practical application of everything we've covered. If you currently have any amount saved and invested, any amount at all, you are ahead of the majority of Americans your age. Approximately 40% of Americans between 35 and 55 have zero retirement savings. Not a small amount. Zero. If you have $10,000 invested, you have cleared the most psychologically difficult hurdle, the one of starting. The path from $10,000 to $100,000 is governed by the same mathematics we've described. It's a question of time and consistency, not a question of whether the math works. If you have $50,000, you are in the final stretch of the hardest phase. A compounding is beginning to become visible. The $100,000 threshold that changes everything is closer than it has ever been. If you have $100,000, you are not 1/10 of the way to $1 million. You are 1/3 of the way there. The hard phase is behind you. The compounding that will do the majority of the remaining work is in front of you. And the only thing that can stop it is you deciding to stop it. Don't stop. The math is on your side. Now you know exactly where you stand.